All right, so this is Dr. Sweeney, and what we're going to look at today is we're going to be looking at loans. So a loan is an amount of money that a person or financial institution lends to another person with the expectation that the recipient will repay the loan in a certain time period with an additional interest charge. The interest is generally a percentage rate and is calculated at a regular basis, and that'll be either daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, or yearly. We're going to look mostly at monthly for the purposes of this class. The interest is in general expected to be paid in monthly installments over a set period of years. In general, the longer the bank expects you to pay back the loan, the higher the interest rate. And so what this does is this offsets the longer time that it will take for the bank to pay back its investment or make back its investment. So like, for example, you may see that if you have a 6-year car loan, that the interest rate is going to be more than if you have a 5-year car loan. Or if you get a 15-year mortgage, the interest rate is less than a 30-year mortgage. Okay, and that's because in those 15 years, the bank would be repaid more quickly. Although over that 30 years, they'd rather have that because they'd end up getting more interest, right? Okay, and we call the amount of money that a bank or a person loans to another the principal, right? So that's similar to the kind of principal that we've been looking at thus far, right? So we've got principal, we've got the interest, and the total amount of money that ends up getting paid to the bank is that principal plus the interest. So when we're working with loans, we've got some information that we want to determine. So what is the information that we want to have in order to determine information for a loan? So we're going to ascribe some variables that are going to go along with each one of these terms. The first thing that we need is the principal. That's the amount of money that's being loaned. The second is we need to know the amount for the monthly payment. We're going to call that M in this case. Then we have to know how long we have until the loan, we will have the loan for. And that's the time generally in years. Okay, that's like your 15-year mortgage, your 30-year mortgage, your 5-year car loan. And we have the interest rate R, which is calculated as a decimal, but it's given to us as a percentage generally. So what we're going to do when we do our calculations is we're going to have to change that percentage into a decimal. And so you want to make sure that you're able to do that pretty easily. Okay? So anytime we're trying to figure out information about a loan, we'll generally need all or most of the information to fully understand the loan. So when we're looking at it, we want to kind of, get some real clarity on what it is that we're looking at when we get a loan or when we're actually looking at a loan. So for example, we might get this kind of information here, right? We'll get the principal, the amount financed, say $12,000. The interest rate, 5%. The length or term of the loan, which might be like, say, for example, 5 years, compounded monthly, and then maybe a monthly payment of $226.45. Some things that we might also want to know, we might want to also know how much interest that we will pay over the entire length of the loan, how much money that we're going to have to actually pay fully to the bank, which will be different from the principal. It'll be our principal plus the interest, okay? And sometimes we want to know, we will want to know some things like, well, how long will it take us to pay off the balance? How much is the remaining balance? So a lot of things that we're going to get in terms of information on any kind of loan paperwork. Right? But for our purposes right now, these are going to be the big things that we need to know, right? The principal or the amount financed, the interest rate, the length of the term of the loan, and what the monthly payment might be. Let's take a look now. What if we wanted to calculate the principal for a loan? So we want to determine the amount of money that we could finance, take a loan out for, given the monthly payment that we think we can afford. So let's say, for example, that we know that we can afford an $1,150 per month mortgage payment. You found a 30-year loan at 8% interest. Okay, how much principal could you afford for the loan? So what size loan could you take out? Another question that we could ask too is how much money would you pay in total to the loan company? And then how much money would you have paid? So those are 3 questions that we could ask given certain pieces of information that we actually have. We're going to use a formula in order to do this. So the trick for the formula is one, picking the proper formula, that we're knowing what we're looking to solve for. 2, figuring out what information that we have and how we put that into the formula. And then 3, actually doing the formula properly instead of our calculators or wherever we're doing it. Okay? So let's take a look at this question. And we first need to know what kind of formula we're going to need for this. So we're going to go with that the principal is going to equal the monthly payment times 1 minus 1 plus r over 12 to the negative 12t in parentheses all over r over 12. Okay? And so that is our formula. We know P is going to be the principal. That's the thing we're actually solving for. So when I'm asking what question is it asking for, it's asking for how much principal. M equals the monthly payment. R is equal to the rate. And T is going to equal the time for the loan. When I look at my problem, I can see that M, my monthly payment, is going to be $1,150. My R, my rate, is going to be 0.08. Remember, we're going to take the 8% and we're going to turn it into a decimal. And my time T is going to be equal to 30. What I'll do now is I'll just plug that into my formula. So my principal is going to equal 1,150 times 1 minus 1 plus 0.08 divided by 12 to the negative 12. And this is 12 times 30. In parentheses, all over 0.08 divided by 12. So what I'm going to do first, now that I've got that all figured out and I've got it put into my formula, is I'm going to go in here and I'm going to take 1,150 and I'm going to first figure out the things that are in parentheses. I'm going to use my order of operations. So this is now going to be 1 minus, and this will be 1 plus 0.0812 over 12. So I'm going to actually figure that out. 1 plus 0.08 divided by 12. And that'll end up giving me 1.0066667. Okay? Excuse me, not 1 minus. Oh, yeah. So there'll be 1 minus, and it'll be that. And this is now going to be, I'm going to take this piece here, the exponent, and that, when I multiply those two together, that's going to give me negative 360. Then I'm going to divide it through by, and this is 0.08 divided by 12, and that's going to be 0.006667. Okay? So I've done my parentheses first. Always do your parentheses first. Second, now I'm going to actually do my exponent. So my exponent is to the negative 360th power, so I'm going to take that 1.06600666667, and I'm going to raise it to the negative 360th power. And what I get is I get 1,150 times 1 minus, and now this is 0.091443337. There we are. And that'll be then divided by 0.006667. Next up, I've got another parentheses in my order of operations, so I'll do the next parentheses. So I get 1 minus that number. Okay? And so that ends up equaling 1,150 times 0.9085566,286. And I'm going to actually do a lot of decimal points here so that I don't actually end up with too far off of my number. The more rounding that I do, the further off from my number that I might actually get. Okay, and then I'll divide that by 0.00667. And finally, what I'll do is I'll just go through it and I'll do that. I'll multiply by 1,150, and then I'll divide by 0.00667. And what I'm left with is I'm left with approximately, because I rounded a couple of times, $156,647.69. And so that's the amount of principal. That's what I found. I found principal. So the amount of loan that I could actually afford, if I can afford a $1,150 payment, right, at 8%, is going to end up being $156,647.69. Now, let's look at the second question that I have. How much money would you pay in total to the loan company? Well, what you need to think about here is that the total that you pay to the loan company is your monthly payment times the number of months that you pay it, right? So if you kind of think about that, that makes sense. Oh, I pay a monthly payment, and I'm going to pay that over a certain amount of time. In this case, 30 years every month. So what I'm going to use then is I'm going to use multiplication. So the total amount to the loan company is going to end up being equal to the monthly payment, M, times the time times 12, because that's the monthly payment times the number of years in time times 12 months in a year. And so that's my formula. And if you think about it, it kind of makes sense. That's actually how much you pay to the company. Your monthly payment over the amount of time you pay. So we're going to take 1,150, that's my monthly payment, times 30 years, times 12 months. And what we get is we get $414,000. So that's what you actually pay to the company. There it is. So for your loan of $156,647.69, you pay $414,000. All right. So now what we want to do is we want to figure out what's the amount of interest paid. Well, what we want to do is realize that the total paid to the company is actually equal to their principal, how much they charged you, right, plus the interest. So if I want to find the interest, that's going to be the total minus the principal, right? We'll take the total amount minus the amount of money that they financed for the loan, total amount that we gave them minus the amount they financed for the loan, and everything left over has got to be interest. So when we do that, we're going to end up equaling, okay, that'll be $414,000 minus $156,647.69. We put that in our calculator, we get $257,352.31. And in general, that's how we find that. The amount of interest paid, in general, is going to be the principal, well, is going to be the total minus the principal. Okay? So we first figure out what the principal is, right? How much money we have for principal. Then we figure out the total amount, right? And then we take the total amount minus the principal, and that gives us the interest. Let's take a look at another situation. So let's take a look. You want to pay $450 a month for 5 years at 4% interest compounded monthly for a car. How much can you afford to pay for the car? How much money will you pay to the bank? And how much interest will you pay on the loan? Okay, so we're going to utilize the same exact formula because one, we want to know how much can you afford to pay for the car. That's going to be your principal. How much money will you pay to the bank? Well, that's the monthly payments over the length of time that we've got. And how much interest will you pay on the loan? Okay, and that's going to end up being our total amount minus our principal. So we're going to write down our values here. We're looking for P. Like I'm just making that a question mark. I don't know what it is. My monthly payment M is going to be $450. My time T is 5 years. And my rate R is 0.04. So those are going to be the information that we need. We'll use our equation. P equals, okay, our monthly payment, $450, times 1 minus, and what you might want to do here is you actually might want to go in and see if you can, pause the video, put the numbers into the equation, see if you can go out and do that yourself. It's kind of helpful. Minus 1 plus 0.04 over 12 to the negative 12 times 5 divided by 0.04 over 12. So now we've got to go in and we've got to do some calculation here to find our principal. We'll first figure out 1 plus 0.04 divided by 12. And that gives me, so I got 450 times 1 minus 1.003333 to that. Now, negative 12 times 5 is negative 60. All divided by, and then 0.04 divided by 12 is going to be 0.00333333. Okay? All right, now the next thing I need to do in my order of operations is I need to go in here and I need to take this to the negative 60th power. I need to go find my exponent. So that's what I'm going to do. It's nice, I can actually just go and use my little caret button, make it to the negative 60th. So this is now going to give me 450 times 1 minus, and this will be now be 0.819, 003, and divided by then 0.003333. Okay? I'll now do my next set of parentheses. 1 minus, And that ends up giving me, so I've got 450 times 0.1809968 divided by 0.003333. So we'll do that multiplication now. 450 times 0.1809968 divided by now 0.003333. And that gives me then $24,434.83. So essentially what I've got here is I figured out that at a $450 payment over 5 years at 4% interest, I can afford a $24,434.83 car. Okay? Assuming that I don't have any kind of down payment. Down payments are going to be something that we look at in just a little bit. So now I know what my principal is. That's how much I've actually paid for the car. What about the total amount of money? Well, the total amount of money, just like we saw before, is going to be that M times T times 12. So that's going to end up being 450 times 5 years times 12. So when I put that into my calculator, I get $27,000. It's interesting, right? When we saw a 30-year loan, right, at the 8%, the cost, that the total amount that we paid was $414,000 to the bank. That was almost $257,000 in just interest. So the length of that loan and the higher interest rate made the difference between this number here and this number here way bigger. That's like an important thing to get. The longer your loan goes for, the more interest you're going to pay, right? So we go on here. We're like, okay, so I take $27,000, okay, minus $24,434.83, okay, and that's going to be my amount of interest. So, by the way, we saw this before. This is my total minus my principal. So now $27,000 minus $24,434.83. That ends up giving me $2,565.17. And that's the amount of interest that I pay. Okay? Process is exactly the same as what we did before. Just different numbers. We've just got to go in, calculate them into our formulas. Okay? And take your time utilizing that calculator. Now, I'll give you a hint here. If you are having issues with the calculator, what I would do is I would go into the Math Center, go into MASH if you're at SCC, or wherever your local, tutoring place is if you're at a community college, and have them help you with the calculator. Sometimes it just makes a big difference to have somebody show you by hand, in person, live. Okay? So, there's my second example. We're now going to move on to figure out what should your monthly payment be if you were given a certain amount of principal. All right, so now let's see, how do we calculate monthly payments? And sometimes this is something that we want to know even more, right? Because we want to figure out, well, if I actually took out this loan, what would be its monthly payments? For most people's purposes, we could calculate these on like Bankrate, like Bankrate.com or like some other place where they actually have loan calculators and they have monthly payment calculators. What we want to do is we want to make sure that we understand like what are the different things that go into calculating our monthly payment. If you think about it, we've still got our monthly payment M, we have our principal P, we have our rate, and we have our time. So as the principal gets bigger, the monthly payment should get bigger. As the rate gets bigger, the monthly payment should also get bigger. And as the time gets bigger, the monthly payment should get bigger, right? As the time of the term of the loan gets bigger, right, then we should actually expect that the time of the term of the loan is actually going to decrease. Or the monthly payment will decrease. And that's because if you extend out the term of the loan, we pay less per month, right? But we pay it over a longer period of time. So that monthly payment goes down, but overall you're going to end up paying more money, okay? And those are going to be the big things that we do for calculating these monthly payments. So let's look at that. Let's look at the equation. So we got M, that equals P times R over 12, right? And that's the stuff on the top of the decimal. So the bigger this gets, right, okay, bigger means bigger monthly payment. right? Kind of think about that. That's our relationship between the quantities. And then we'll divide that by 1 minus 1 plus r over 12 to the negative 12t. Now we said as the time gets bigger, this payment should get smaller. And that's actually true because notice this has got a negative exponent. So what happens with negative exponents is as they get bigger, the number that they're raising them to gets smaller. Okay? And then this part right here, right? As it gets bigger, the size of the monthly payment actually gets smaller, right? Anything that's on the bottom is going to make the size of our loan perhaps smaller. Okay? So that's our equation. M equals P times R over 12 divided by the quantity 1 minus the quantity 1 plus R over 12 to the negative 12t. So let's take a look at this in action. So let's consider this problem. Suppose that we have a loan for $300,000 at an interest rate of 2.5% for 30 years. What would be our monthly payment? So we want to find M, our monthly payment. We know our principal. That's going to be $300,000. Our rate, R, is going to equal 0.025. And our time is going to equal 30. So we'll use that monthly payment formula. M is going to equal our principal, $300,000, times, and this will be 0.025 divided by 12. Okay? And notice, as the rate gets bigger, the top is going to get bigger. And if the top on a fraction gets bigger, that means that, in fact, we are going to get higher monthly payments. Right? Then we'll divide that by 1 minus 1 plus 0.025 divided by 12. We'll raise that to the negative 12 times 30 power. Just like in our first formula, what I'm going to do first is I'm going to do this one here, the 0.025 divided by 12. This one, the one in the parentheses, and I'm going to figure out what negative 12 times 30 is going to be. So I go 0.025 divided by 12, and that gives me, so I've got 300,000 times 0.002083333. Then divided by 1 minus, and this is going to be 1 plus 0.02 divided by 12. That's 1.002083333 to the negative 360th power. Because negative 12 times 30 is negative 360. Next, I'm going to do my exponents because they're in the order of operations. So I've got, this is going to end up giving me 300,000 times 0.002083333 divided by 1 minus 0.4727352212. Now here's something that's actually really important. Computers and calculators in general aren't that smart. So what we really want to do is we want to treat that bottom one like it's in parentheses. We want to do that first. So I'm in fact going to take 1 minus, and that's my answer. And so I'm going to get 300,000 times 0.002083333 divided by now 0.527264778. Okay? And now that I have that, now I can just go in and multiply and then divide. So 300,000 times 0.0020833 divided by 0.52726478. And that ends up giving me $1,185.36. Excuse me. Yep, there it is. And that's my monthly payment. So for a $300,000 loan at 0.25% or at 2.5% for 30 years, my monthly payment will end up being $1,185.36. Well, question, what in total will we pay to the bank? So this is a really important question. Now remember, what we pay in total to the bank is going to be our monthly payment times the time times 12. So this gives me $1,185.36 times 30 times 12. So when I do that, what I get is I'm going to end up paying $426,729.89 when I round. So that's the total paid to the bank. And so my total interest, right? Remember, my total interest is going to be equal to the total minus the principal. And so that's going to end up equaling, right? My principal was $300,000. So this is going to be $426,729.89 minus $300,000. And when I do that, I get $126,729.89. So that's how we end up calculating our monthly payments, and then utilizing those in order to not only find the total paid to the bank, right, but also figuring out the total interest. Notice how the total paid to the bank and the total interest, they're exactly the same, right, in terms of how we find them, right? We're going to take the monthly payment times the time times 12, always the same, and our total interest is always going to be that total minus the principal, all right? And so this kind of should clue you in that basically we've just got two basic scenarios whenever we're figuring out our loans. Another piece here, just from a practical perspective, is to just consider that if your rate gets higher, okay, what ends up happening is you're going to end up paying more in terms of your monthly payment, and you'll pay more in terms of interest. As well, if you end up increasing the time of your loan, that's also going to increase the amount of interest that you pay. All right? Something to keep in mind as you're actually going through and actually getting loans. All right, so this actually concludes our lecture on loans.